Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. I'm your host, Misha Zvagensov, and today I have the pleasure of sharing an insightful conversation with a distinguished guest, Barry Moltz. Barry is not just a small business expert, but a man with a rich tapestry of experiences, from authoring books to teaching entrepreneurship and even appearing as a business expert on the History Channel. In our talk, we delve into the nuances of small business growth, the power of storytelling in business, and Barry's unique perspectives on leadership and management. Stay tuned for an episode packed with valuable insights and engaging stories. Barry, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I keep thinking whenever you mention 7 books, I keep thinking in my mind, and my wife hasn't read any of them. She says, I live with you. Why do I have to read them? I hear that stuff all the time.
Endless, right? Just would you stop about it already?
It's just that. So I dedicate my books to other people now, so 'cause she never opens them up.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Hey, well, let's talk about the books for a second. Have you had success with those books, or has it been more of just ego? Or talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I think that, you write a book because you think you got something to say, and then you hope people buy it. Most of the books that I sell are through the speaking engagements I do. So when I go speak, people buy 200 or 300 books, and then they, give it to their friends, and I sign them, at the event. But it's really kind of funny because the older books I've now started to buy off of eBay, and I give them out at events. I buy them for $1 or $2 or $5, whatever it is. And it's so interesting because they have inscriptions to other people inside of them, and some really meaningful inscription. I guess it really meant for them. It really meant something to them since they put it up on eBay to sell them. So
Oh my
comes
God. Does that just streamline the whole process? Saves you from
just
needing to
goes
read?
all the way around. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Um, so you've got your anybody listening and or watching or following along can go to barrymoltz.com, www.barrymoltz.com. So if you're grooving on what Barry is saying, by all means go check it out. You've got all kinds of great content there. Um, we've got a hard cap of 30 minutes. So one thing that jumped out that we have to get to is in your bio, it says you most recently appeared as a business expert in the History Channel's The Booze, Bets, and Sex
That's
That
right.
Build America. Yeah, as an expert. So, okay, go ahead.
Well, first of all, when I signed on to that project, the title of the project was called Empires of Excess, right? That was the name of the thing. So I said, sure, I'll do that in the History Channel because they're looking for some experts because they were going to talk about some very successful family-oriented, big businesses that were in different industries in the United States and how they got built. So I said, great. So I went to New York. I did a day's worth of interview on, 5 or 6 different people. And then then I'm waiting for it to come out. I'm waiting for it to come out. And all of a sudden, this booze, bets, and sex come out. I go, God, that sounds a lot like what I did. And of course it was. And it was a better title, right? Let's face it. So, we talked about, building the cigarette industry, building the condom industry, building the Playboy industry, and how these people made their money. So I think it was an interesting project if you watch it.
Well, that's super cool. Well, I mean, how were you an expert in that you were doing the interviewing, or what expertness did you bring to the table, or why did they reach out to Barry for this
Well,
for you?
because I read Playboy, I drink Jack Daniels. No, I'm only kidding. It's because they tried to put it in some kind of business context, right? So, for example, when the booze when it wasn't legal, right? Is there a risk to business if you're selling something that's not legal? So they tried to put it in a business context, or when when Playboy was coming out, was coming up against the censorship kinds of things and types of things they did with advertisers. So just to give it a kind of business context.
Oh, cool, 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 cool. So literally from, hey, Barry's an expert in business, small business
Right.
is who you like to help most. It
Like,
looks like from your, yeah, go
sure.
ahead.
Like when cigarettes came out, right, they were saying how healthy cigarettes were for you, even though they knew it wasn't,
Which
right?
is,
So
yeah.
that kind of business concept.
Yeah, cool, cool. And then how did they find you or how did you
Mostly on the web and other work that I've done, on TV. So I don't know, maybe they were looking for a short Jewish guy. Who knows? I just don't know.
that's amazing. How many speaking gigs do you do a year these days?
Well, I used to do probably about 25, but I would say I'm down to about 10 because uh, after COVID, I've kind of got tired of traveling. So I'm really working mostly on mergers and acquisitions for small businesses. But I still do it. I still got it. I still can bring it. And I'm getting finally on the A list. Going to Cancun next month to speak at an event, and they're paying for my wife to come with me.
Amazing. Do you mind saying what the event is?
It's for a private corporation, so I'd rather not.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. Sorry to put you on the spot
No,
there.
it's all good.
Your website talks a lot about uh, as a small business expert, you help owners grow again, unlocking their forgotten potential, um, things like that. Are you still doing that? Are you looking to do
Yeah,
that, or what?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I still get small business owners get unstuck. I'll have maybe, 4 or 5 retainer clients at any given point in time because a lot of people start businesses that had a certain amount of success, which really means that they've been able to buy themselves a job or build themselves a job. But they haven't gotten to the point where they thought they would get to, where they built a business where making money isn't just all about what they can do. And so they're usually stuck in one of 5 areas. And the 2 areas that are most popular are sales and marketing. They don't know how to do sales or they don't have a consistent strategy for marketing. And this other one is leadership management, that they were never really taught how to lead people. So they have a tendency to do it all themselves. I was fortunate enough that when I started my career, I did it at IBM. When I became a manager, they actually sent you away for a month to Charm School, which was management school, and they taught you how to be a manager. They videotaped you. There was all these mock interviews and things like that. So I really had the benefit of that type of training, and most small business owners just don't.
Mm. So are you you get one of your retainer clients and then if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like although there I think you said five categories, but there's really two that most people seem to fall into. One is sales and marketing. They have no sales skills or no consistent marketing strategy. Yes.
Right? Or they're afraid to sell.
Afraid to sell. Love that. I'm just taking a note because I want to make sure to touch on that. I'm watching the clock too. Or they do it themselves, so no capacity to manage. Is that fear? Or let's talk about the management for a moment. Is that fear, or they don't see a path to that? Or
I think that when most businesses start out, their organization is just really a dot, right? It's just them. And then they hire the first person and they work for the founder. They hire the second person, they report to the founder. They hire the third person, reports to the founder. So in the very beginning, especially when you have 5 or 6 people, you have this hub and spoke kind of organization. And the business owner starts to enjoy that because they are at the center of everything. They're in the middle of every single decision and it really feeds their ego, but they don't realize that in order really to build a successful business that isn't about you, you need to have leverage. So you need to have more of a hierarchical organization where other people are responsible for results in certain parts of the business, and they have a hard time making that transition. I remember in my last business, and this is really before email was even that popular, it took me a long time to give up the job of opening up the mail for the day. Because if I opened up the mail, I understood every single thing that was happening in that business. So I didn't want to give it up. But obviously, somewhere along the line, I had to.
that is amazing. So tell me, do you have, I know we're limited on time, and so we're going to do some gross generalizations here, but helping somebody break out of that spoken hub mentality, do you have specific steps or exercises or what? How, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, my last book I wrote was called Change Masters. It was really how to make the changes that, of course, you want to make. You already know you have to make. And it was really kind of interesting because going back to my wife, I have a whole exercise in there about how do you make a change that you want to make. So I was testing the worksheet out on a bunch of different people. So I gave it to my wife and I said, honey, I'm testing this out for my book. would you fill it out? So the first question says, what change do you want to make? She looks at it, she goes, I don't need to make any changes, so I guess I don't have to read your book. So that was that. Book number 7. So what I try to do is try to figure out what is driving, why does the person want to make the change? Because change is very hard. You know, your brain is a pattern making machine. It just wants to keep doing the same thing over and over again, especially if you've had some success. So why do you want to change to more of a hierarchical method? Is it because you're working too hard, you can't scale it, you can't make enough money? So we try to first focus on the pain and then do very small changes one at a time. Yeah, and when everyone retells the story, they made all these big leaps and these giant risks and they paid off. But mostly successful people take one tiny risk at a time and build on that or learn something and go in another direction.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I think the way it's projected to us in social media land or what have you is, yeah, it's like these massive things when really it's just what you said. It's incremental steps, finding acceptance of your situation and what am I doing willing to do daily to break out of that and change, yeah?
We have to understand that most great financial overnight successes take 8 to 10 years, right? It doesn't happen instantaneously like we think.
Yeah.
Only in the
Uh,
retelling of the story it does.
only in the retelling of the story. Yeah, the epiphany moment when your wife did the worksheet and it changed everything,
That's right.
right?
In fact, in the introduction of the book, it says, I hope someday my wife makes a change and reads this book. And of course, then I got all this email that says, why doesn't your wife read your books? So it's kind of funny.
That's amazing. How long have you been married?
32 years.
32 years.
Long
Congratulations, my
time.
friend. That's
Long time.
amazing. Wow. And then kids, grandkids, everything?
Not grandkids yet. Waiting. Kids starting
Yeah.
to get married, so we're waiting.
Are fantastic. I know my boys, I have two boys, 20 and 22, and I thought I would never say this, but I'm like, I'm kind of looking forward to some grandkids, you
Yeah,
know?
that's gonna
Yeah.
be
Um, well, cool. Let's talk about the sales and marketing and the afraid to sell bit, right? Because you said we had five, was it five or seven
yeah,
main
five,
areas?
five.
Five.
The other three are really, managing their money and then their productivity and then customer experience. Those are the other three. But marketing and sales always comes up because people think that they're not good at sales, but what they're really not good is at marketing. Most people, when someone raises their hand, a prospect, and says, hey, I'm interested in what you're selling, most of those people, most business owners can close 1 out of 3 of those. The problem is, how do you get those suspects, the people that should be interested in what you're selling, to raise your hand and say, I'm interested? That's what marketing does. It gets those people to raise their hands, and that takes a while. I don't believe that we actually can sell anything to anybody. I think we have to be there when people are ready to buy. And if you don't do
Mm,
marketing over a long period of time, you're not going to be there when people are ready to buy.
mm, I love that thought and hate and hate that thought at the same time. But I had a note, you've got your small business show, is what it's called, right?
Yeah.
Correct?
Which you
Uh,
were on
Yes, which I was on.
coming
Can't,
out.
yeah, can't wait. Super excited to share that with my audience and was a ton of fun. And side note, what a machine, what a experience that was. Like you have that dialed in and it's really cool the way you did it and executed on it and your assistant and that whole process was super cool. But I have a note that you've had your small business show is what it's called. I'm saying
Yeah,
that
Farm
right?
Biz
Yep.
Radio Show, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for 15 years now or some version.
15 years, yeah.
Yeah, which speaks to your this long game that you just were talking about, right? Like that's a long game thing. Like you're trying to be available when that person is ready to buy. Yeah.
It's interesting because people say, well, how'd you get Amazon to be a sponsor? How'd you get Facebook to be a sponsor, right? And I said, well, first I did the show for 5 years with no one being a sponsor. And they're like, well, I want to skip that part, right? I want to go right to where you get the famous sponsors. And I go, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. When did you find that your show had legs? So was there a passion project or when you started, um, was there like a cohesive vision or was it like Talk to me. Does that question make sense? Or
Yeah, no, I don't think there was a cohesive vision. It was like, hey, it'd be kind of cool to talk to people and try to learn from them. So I first started interviewing my clients. Show number one was a gentleman named Scott Jordan, who runs a company called Scotty Vest. His claim to fame was, well, he did this really interesting things on Shark Tank, but we'll kind of put that off to the side. But he basically has sold a travel vest or travel clothing. And he's been incredibly successful. And I think we have him on usually like every 100 shows.
yeah,
It was just on show number 750. And then those people refer you other people. And now it's easy to get people on the show because the PR people pitch their clients.
yeah,
And now I'm really looking for things that are interest, me, because we've covered the topic so many different times. I'm trying to cover something interesting. Like, so for example, the first show that's going to come out of the year is about a guy named Mr. First, right? He was a guy named Omar, and I can't remember his last name, Katan or something, where he showed up 525 times to be the first person to do something, like the first person to cross the Brooklyn Bridge, the first person to take the New York subway, the first person, and he would sleep like overnight to get to be the first. And so, what is it like to be the first? So that was kind of interesting. And then I did an interview late last year on this sex cult. And where we're examining was how does regular business sometimes become a cult? How does the culture become a cult where you just have to follow what the company says? So that comparison was kind of interesting. Those kind of things.
yeah. No, I love that. I actually listened to that interview with that lady. It was a lady, and
It
it
was Ellen
was
Hewitt. It was very heavily edited because they're very litigious.
very very litigious. Yeah. Um, But, so I teach people how to guest speak on podcasts, put themselves out there, find shows, get on shows, what to say, when to say it, stuff like that. And one of the tricks I teach people is, find a show that you want to guest speak on and then look uh, at their guest list. And that's a great opportunity to find other shows. And right, you can it unlocks this vein of opportunities, right?
And try to do something different, right? I mean, again, I know there's only about 5 topics to cover, but try to cover it like in a different way or something that's topical for today. So, we did a lot of stuff around this last year around why do people lie on their resumes, right? And of course, this was, kicked off by a guy like George Santos, right? And so people do lie on their resumes in business. And so why do they lie? Or why do people believe things in business, like in life, that just aren't true? What
Mm.
advantage? What do they get out of it? So you try to connect to the things that are topical.
Yeah, I love that. Um, I got on your show. What if you remember? I mean, you're talking to obviously tons and tons and tons of people, and I'm assuming getting solicited all the time by PR firms to get people on your show. Do you remember what sort of helped uh
I don't
get me
know.
on the show?
It was probably the photo that you sent along. No, I think it was, a unique approach, to a topic that we've covered, right? And also, I try to listen to people on other podcasts to see if they can do a good interview. Unfortunately, a lot of people, especially corporate CEOs and people that are professors at universities, don't know how to give good interviews. Also, people that are trying to sell some kind of information product also don't give a good interview because you ask them one question, then they go on for 5 minutes. And that's not an interview, that's a monologue.
Yeah. So tell me what makes a good interview then to you? Like you've literally done thousands of interviews at this point, yes?
Yeah, definitely thousands of interviews. I think where it can be conversational, right? And someone's trying to give you their unique point of view based on their experience. Also, there's got to be some kind of storytelling that's really involved because people want to hear about stories. So when I interviewed Sally Sussman, who's the chief PR person at Pfizer, she was talking about how they came out with the vaccine and really the battle to get the vaccine into people's arms. And she just didn't do it from a technical standpoint. She did it from actual stories that happened. And to me, that's interesting. I think people will be interested and follow the stories.
Mm, mm, mm.
I interviewed one guy where He was driving along with his father in a car, and they were in a car accident. They were both drunk, and his father died, and he went to jail. And his whole point of view was, I can't let the worst day of my life define the rest of my life. Or another guy that I interviewed who was a restaurateur that was running out of money, so he started stealing and then he went to jail. Would he have made the same decisions over again? So I think people in the end are interested in these issues that they face, but also stories around those issues.
I love that. You said most CEOs, what I heard, blow it when it
Yeah,
comes to the interview. How is that or why? Or put some color around
I
that.
think they don't have enough media training, and I really and I try to get also back to the PR people and said, this person, this woman, this man, they've got an interesting topic. They're smart people, but they need more media training because they really don't know how to answer the question. Now, I'm not talking about, like when I had the, CEO of Apple on, or I had, one of the sharks on, or any of these other kinds of people, right? These are media kinds of people. I mean, someone that was, head of Jamba Juice or something like that. Now, that person wasn't a particularly good interview, right? Had some good things to say, but not a good interview. They need media training because it does take practice, just like anything else.
So are they lacking mostly? Again, let's just do some gross generalizations. My gut's telling me that they're probably not good at telling the stories from a customer point of view, or
I
like,
think it's just practice. And I,
mm,
and I think it's having a conversation where it's two ways. You'll notice that most answers I'm giving you don't go on for more than 30 or 45 seconds, right? Because it's got to be conversational to make it really interesting. And I think most of them are so used to speaking and people listening rather than having a two-way conversation.
mm, and perhaps let the interaction. It's almost like let the interaction build their story instead of just coming out with a full story monologue. Give the bits to go ahead.
And professors are even worse because they're used to just presenting. And sometimes I also interview a lot of journalists that have broken stories like New York Times, Bloomberg, Wired. And some of those folks are really good at interviews, and some of them are just good writers and they don't know how to do an interview.
Mm,
That's why you try to listen to people ahead of time.
Let's talk about the info product people. What are their monologues? They're just trying
They're
to
the worst.
sell, or yeah.
They're the worst. They're the worst. They're just trying to sell you something. They're trying to sell you something out of thin air, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's like, okay, I asked you one question, and now the interview's only 12 minutes, and you've already talked for six of them.
Oh
So
my God,
where do we go from here?
I'm so
And
scared.
sometimes I don't air them.
I'm well. All of a sudden, I'm super scared. I fell into that bucket.
No, you are
So,
correct.
okay.
So
Goodness.
again, where can you have a conversation with the person? Because I believe in any kind of podcast format, people are tuning in to listen to the conversation that you're having.
I love
Uh,
that.
I think it's different if someone is incredibly famous. Sometimes it doesn't matter what they say, but typically it's what they say.
Mm.
Like I interviewed Amy Schneider, who was the second most winning on Jeopardy. She's also transgender. She came out with a book, and she told some really interesting stories on the interview and in that book. So I think where people are pretty interested. I mean, she tried to get on Jeopardy for 15 years and was denied. And finally, when she got on, she was the second most winning champion.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Who was the CEO of Apple at the time that you got on?
He was the past CEO. It was the guy that was, I can't remember his name. He was also the CEO of Pepsi.
Yes, I remember. I remember
I
that guy. That's
can't
what I was going.
remember what his name was. I'm embarrassed by that, but he'll probably come to me after the show.
Yeah, was it Michael something or no? I can't.
No,
No, he kind of didn't uh, manage Apple the best. That would be people's perception. I think he was kind of the transitory between. He like took over for Jobs.
I have to go to
Yeah.
Google, John Scully.
John Scully. There we go. And then he kind of blew up Pepsi too, perhaps, or that would be my memory of it, or the way it was presented. But um,
And then I interviewed the guy who invented the barcode, right? It's like this thing
oh,
is so not. He was an IBM who invented the barcode. How
yeah,
cool is that, right?
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Well, I was just going to say, John Scully, was he a good interview? I mean, he
Yeah,
just probably had so
yeah.
many rich stories, and
But again, these are very media savvy CEOs, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. That's super cool. I try to teach people to, you know, get their story bank in line. Like literally start inventorying your stories so you can answer questions with a good story that's appropriate, right? Versus trying to wing it so much. Like at least be thoughtful in your stories. Yeah. Like you
Whenever I,
clearly have your stories in line. Go ahead.
whenever I watch people like on, the late night talk shows, right? And my wife goes, so and so is so articulate. I'm saying, you don't understand. They've told that story 100 times. You ask me this question, I'm telling you this story. You ask me this question, I'm telling you this story, right? And
Yeah.
that's the way it goes. And people are very, very practiced about that. And that also makes a good interview. There's nothing wrong with it.
Mm, so good. Um, I have a few questions that I had written down that I want to ask that we're not going to be able to get to. So maybe we'll save it for a round two. But I'm just looking at my list now and I'm thinking one that might be most appropriate for where we are right now is what is the one thing that is working best for you right now in growing your business?
For me, it's referrals and asking people for referrals, right? Referrals are incredibly powerful because you get to skip all that trust type of stuff, right? You're automatically a trusted agent, right? You have one up in everybody else. Sure, you have to prove you can still do a good job, but you kind of get through the gatekeeper. So getting referrals is really important, but also asking people for referrals is also really important as well because some people, if you don't ask them, they don't think to give you referrals. So if your
Mm.
referral machine is going to keep going to get referrals, you have to ask for referrals. And people say, well, I'm a little bit skittish. When should I ask for referrals? I say, well, ask for a referral towards the end of the project when you've been incredibly successful and they're very excited about how you've helped them. So what I try to do is I especially get referrals when I'm helping people sell their businesses. As soon as we complete the transaction, I ask them for a quote I can put on my website about what a great job that I did. And then I say, is there anybody else? And I stay in touch with them, not keeping asking them for referrals, but staying in touch with them, what I've been doing, the success I've had. So maybe they'll think of someone else to refer me. But I would say, I get 1 or 2 referrals a day.
Oh, amazing. Are you scripted? Are you very scripted? Like, do you know what you're gonna say? Like literally how you ask for the referral? Or do you just does it does
No,
that question
I
make
just,
sense?
it's
Yeah.
usually, it's usually, do you know someone else like you that I might be able to help
Mm.
or has similar issues I might be able to help?
You perhaps have more leads than you know what to do with then.
No, no, because some of the referrals aren't very good referrals.
Mm.
Let's make sense. It's not really a good opportunity. They're kind of in a tough place, and I really can't help them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been amazing, Barry. Quick question I'll ask you, and then we can say goodbye offline. But let's end it with this. Anything that you were hoping to say, or anything where you're like, man, I wished I'd have said this. You know what I mean? Because we hang up, and then you're like, oh, I meant to say.
No, I think you do a great interview because I think that you come across, as very warm and friendly and accepting. And so I think one thing you're able to do, which I try to do in my interview, is to be very supportive of the person because I'm here to make them shine. This isn't a combative type of interview. And I think if you make your guest comfortable, they will be comfortable and talk more about their personal stories.
I
So I
love
think you do
that.
a good
Thank
job.
you. Yeah, thank you for that feedback. That's amazing. And everybody, again, barrymoltz.com. Did you have somewhere specific other than that you'd like to guide people or?
Just go there. Now you know why my wife never changed her last name.
Oh my gosh. All right, I'm going to hit stop and then we'll take 2 minutes and say
All right.
goodbye offline. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.